Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my weekly reading wrap-up. And we are at week 13 of 2021 and I'm filming in a little bit of a different location. I mean, I usually kind of film here, but there's a new bookshelf up. I mentioned this on my Insta that I wanted a shelf that was for two things, like one for my like mafia romance and two for mostly indie romance. So there is some traditionally published down below because I have my Cressley Cole, but I just want to show you, I'm just going to lift this up and show you that I have my mafia on top and then I have Katee Robert and some other like indie published. Then I have Nikki Sloan and T.L. Swan. And then I have an amalgamation of other dark romances down here. And so this is a one that I want to be able to film in. And like, I wanted to have baby Tristan pointed forward. And I also have Heart of Blood and Ash. And I just wanted this really dark, beautiful aesthetic of like all my dark romances to be displayed. And the only place left for that was to replace the dilapidated shelf that had my Outlander on it, which still is out. I have it over there, but I don't really read most of the books on that shelf, but I can't bring myself yet to get rid of them. I probably will eventually. I don't have a great place around here to like trade books in. I only have like one or two places and I'm just not ready to like give them up yet, because some of those fantasy books I feel like I might come back around to someday. And I don't know. I've done that before where I've just gotten rid of a bunch of books and then I end up rebuying them later on and I'm like, why the fuck did you do that? You could have just kept them. But anyway, you guys are here for my weekly wrap up. I just wanted to show you the new shelf and film in front of this. My hair, we don't know what the fuck is happening with my hair today. I really need to color my roots, but with my new job, I just like, when I get home, I don't want to. And then like today is Saturday and I would do it on a Saturday, but like I need to film a bunch of videos. I actually have a baby shower today to go to that I'm really excited about. And anyway, okay, you guys aren't usually here for like random life updates, but I am filming this really early in the morning because I have that baby shower and I also have 3 other videos to film. So I was like, if I don't film one of them in the morning, then it's just gonna be crazy. But okay, we need to dive in because I have 20 books to talk about today. I haven't had a 20 book week like since January. So it was pretty intense. As I've shared, at my new job, I am able to read more than I thought I would be able to, mostly exclusively audiobooks, but I thought I would be a lot more like booked for time. But I'm still finding big swatches of time where I can listen to audiobooks. So this was a lot of listening to things. So let's dive in with these because we got a lot to talk about. So first up, I read The Earl of London by Louise. This was the last book in this like series. I don't even know what the series name was, but all the titles in this were like, they were about wealthy people basically. There was the King of Wall Street, the Prince of Park Avenue, the Duke of Manhattan. They all were named like that. And these last few were all narrated by Shane East because they all had British guys in it. And basically what I'm saying is that I went on a Shane East binge, and you'll see that later on in the week. I kind of just went on a binge because I was really loving his narration. Is just so sexy, and he has a lot of books that are on Audible Plus, so that was really exciting. But anyway, so The Earl of London, this book was about the sister of a couple of the other characters we've seen, and she has kind of been the one taking care of the estate, and this up-and-coming Earl, he actually purchases the estate next door back into his family because his father actually gambled the estate away when he was young, and his grandmother gave up the estate so that she could have her grandson because she saw her grandson was not being taken care of very well by her son, and so she literally gambled, or she gave the estate away so she could have him. And so he spent his whole life working and striving to become a businessman, and he buys this back. He then comes back into this world, and he has kind of a chip on his shoulder for the old way of things being done. And he meets this woman, Darcy is her name, so it's kind of cute because her name is Darcy, and she again lives on the estate next door, and they have this meet cute where she's out riding her horse, and now she's riding her horse on his land, which he isn't mad about. He's just like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, the previous owner always let me ride my horse through here. And he's like, oh, well, you can still do that, that's fine. So they have this really great meet cute, and of course everyone in the village is trying to set them up with each other, which neither of them wants. And also, he's trying to bring change into the village by starting a resort that would hopefully bring the economy up. But she's like, they're really fighting against it. So there's this bickering going back and forth about that. This was really sweet. I love this whole series. It was extremely sexy. There's definitely a little bit of like power exchange happening in the bedroom, because something that the hero really likes is that he sleeps with a lot of high-powered businesswomen, and he likes taking the power he likes asking them to give him the power, right? This isn't but he enjoys being in charge and watching these super powerful women, because he's really turned on by powerful women. He is. This isn't a thing of where he wants to bring them down a peg, but he likes it a lot when they will give him control, because he knows how hard it is for them. And this is something that Darcy really likes when she's with him, because she likes being able to give up some of that control. So it was really hot. It was great. Then this is going to shock some people, because if you saw last week's, you know that I read a book by Pam Godwin that was called Blood of Eve, that I put spoilers up for, because something in this book happened that I felt so betrayed. I'm working on reading all of Pam Godwin's books. I'm planning to do a video for you guys on her. She recently was there was just an interview with her with the book club, and it was really interesting to hear her stuff. But this was her first series that she wrote. And it's a horror series, and there's lots of sexy, things happening. But there was something that happened at the end of the second book that did not work for me. And anyway, this third book, I was basically going to read it so that I could just trash the series, right? I was like, I got to finish the third one. I'm reading every Pam Godwin that there is, and I just need to finish it. Well, shocker, I really liked this one. And I'm mad that I liked it, because I wanted to say don't read this series. And I'm still not really saying read this series, because the first two books, they thick. The first one's 450. The second one's 600 pages. And I do not like how that book ended. The way I was able to make this one work is that we're kind of starting from scratch in a certain way. Again, I don't want to spoil and explain it. And the heroine in this one and the hero... And whenever I'm talking about a Pam Godwin, just imagine that hero I'm using to identify the love interest, not because they are a hero, okay? But the way that she made this all play out, and the way that she had, because this is a post-apocalyptic series, there's this disease that went through that killed all women, and we've been crawling our way back from there in this series. The way that we resolved it, it won me back a little bit. And I cried at the end, because there was really good homage paid. There was really good honoring paid to the previous two books. So I gave this a 4.5. But I gave the first one 4 stars, and I gave the second one 2 stars, guys. I gave it 2 stars. And then this one was a 4.5. So if you want to know more about it, watch the video from last week, or message me, and I'll tell you more. But it is a horror story. There's body horror, there's non-consensual stuff, there is all the other Pam Godwin triggers, plus it's horror. So just know that, I'm not really recommending it in the same way that I don't really recommend the Deliver series unless you think that you can handle it. Okay? All right. I need to talk a little faster because we got a lot of books. Then I read To Have and to Hate by R.S. Gray. This was her new release. I binged a lot of R.S. Gray about a year ago, and she was really hit or miss for me. This one was a hit. This one is a arranged marriage at the beginning. Her sister was supposed to marry this guy for business reasons. I don't need to get into that. You understand what the setup of that thing is. But her sister ends up running away with her, driver. And so then our heroine has to step in instead, or else her family is going to be destitute. So she steps in to do it instead, and then she ends up living with this guy and being around him, and they slowly come together. This definitely had some Pride and Prejudice vibes, like it really did, just with how like awkward he was about like his feelings and the way that they were kind of afraid to talk about things. But it didn't annoy me. It didn't annoy me because of the situation they were put in. This isn't two people that have ever been around each other before. So when there's miscommunication in an arranged marriage like this, that is a situation where I'm like, well, yeah, because you don't know each other. So how could they just be like perfectly open and raw about their feelings when they don't even know this person? So I didn't have a problem with it, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. Then I read Booted by Pam Godwin. This was is that the second or the third one? I think it's the third one, because did I read, hold on. Yes, that's the third and final book in the Tide series, or Knots of Sin or something. It's the cowboy series that she has. This one didn't have really any BDSM in it. The previous two had light, like just hold your wrists down, like power exchange stuff. But this one I can't really talk about because both of the characters, it's spoilers for who they are. Get married to the rest of the series, but this one definitely has I wouldn't completely call it enemies to lovers, even though a lot of Pam's books are enemies to lovers. I think most of them are. But there's definitely some misunderstandings that we need to get over. And of course, trigger warnings, it's Pam Godwin. I don't know what else to say about her at this point. If you don't like, everything has a trigger warning with Pam Godwin. Like, that's what she writes. That is what she is when she's bleeding her soul out for us. There's trigger warnings there. Then I got to read the eARC of Broderick by Katee Robert. I am one of her patrons, so I get to read her books ahead of time. And I've read 3 Katee Robert upcoming releases this month, and it has been awesome. I just really loved Broderick. This is part of her Sabine Valley series, and they are all menages. This one was an FFM. I have read a previous FFM by Katee Robert. If you don't know what that means, the FFM represents the genders of the people in the story, and so if it's a menage, the letters that touch each other are the ones where they'll touch each other. So if it's a like threesome, you would say it's an MFM because the two men are focused on who's in the middle. But if it's a MMF, you know that everybody's sharing. If it's an FFM, you know that everybody's sharing. So that's what those mean, just in case. I know some people aren't sure when I just spew out these letters, but this is an enemies to lovers. This is a guard romance. This series is very complicated to set up, as I've shared. Like, you really have to start with Abel. This is going to be a series of 7 books. It's roughly based on 7 brides for 7 brothers. And so each brother takes a bride, but a bride isn't gender specific. So a bride can be a man or a woman. And so in this case, though, Broderick, he's forced to take a bride, and he takes Harlow as his bride. But then the guard, like his best friend, she is the guard who gets assigned to protect Harlow, because Harlow is a daughter of the Amazons, and so she is like a high target, and so she has a personal guard with her all the time. Now the thing is, Broderick and this guard, which I can't remember her name, but they've been best friends for a really long time. There's a sexual tension that's been building between them, and when Harlow comes into this situation, she sees what's going on, and she's like, I am gonna fuck this up. And so she starts pursuing her guard, as well as trying to get Broderick to do more, and she slowly is bringing these two couples together, and is like, let's just all be happy together. We don't need to choose. Let's do this. But it's a very interesting dynamic, because we have a hate to love between Broderick and Harlow. We have kind of an animosity to love between the two women. And then we're slowly trying to bring that together. And I was fascinated by it. I thought the way that she did the dynamics of this one was so good. And I really liked it. I mean, I'm only comparing it to other writing by Katee Robert because I've only ever read her FFMs. It is a menage that I'm just not usually into, because FF scenes just aren't my jam. Like, they're not. They need to be written in a very particular way where I'm, like, into it. Because sometimes you're just not into it, and if you're reading, like, erotic scenes like that and you're not into it, then you're just kind of torturing yourself. But the way that this one worked and the way that Harlow was, it worked for me. So I actually gave this 5 stars, and I was like, damn it, Jen, do you always have to give Katee Robert that? Well, no, because I don't always give her 5 stars, but that one was. Then I read Sweet Thing by J.A. Huss. J.A. Huss I have recently discovered through Audible Plus. She has a lot of her books on Audible Plus. Now, this one is part of a trilogy where the books aren't connected. They just each have a slight taboo element to them. So I didn't read the first one, but this is the second one. And this is a, like, really taboo age gap. But it was also the only thing that's taboo about it, like, is the relationship. Like, the story itself, there's not really trigger warnings in this at all. It was kept very light. But it is taboo because this is a complicated story to set up for what I want to say about it. But the heroine is only 17 in the beginning. She's like a few days away from turning 18. And she's staying in her sister's apartment in the city to do like a class for the summer or whatever. And there's this co-op that her sister's a part of. This hot, older, like, businessman who is also, like, he used to be a drummer. He gets a spot at this co-op. And he likes younger women. Like, he does. He's 35, and he likes dating women in their early 20s. Like, he just does. He likes it. And when he sees this girl, he heard that this girl is, like, 24 years old, because that's how old her sister is. And she's, like, pretending. She's not pretending to be her sister, but that's who he thinks she is. So he's like, ooh, she fits right in my thing. And they hit it off, and she invites him back to her apartment. And when he kisses her, she's like, I can't. I'm only 17. I'm so sorry. And he's like, oh, I thought you were 24, not 17. And he's like, when do you turn 18? And she's like, in 2 days. And he's like, okay, I need to go because we're not going to do this. But then 2 days later, he hasn't stopped thinking about her. So the part that's taboo is him specifically liking her because she's only 18. It borders on being the, like, weird, right? It's kind of like, I feel icky. However, I know I'm a taboo queen. I know I'm a dark queen. This isn't a dark romance. What also made it really interesting is there's a dynamic of her mother is 15 years younger than her dad. And they've been together for 20 years or so. And so there's that element of, like, she's seen these kind of relationships work out. Her mom was only 20 when her dad was 35. So they're not that much different than them. But anyway, you'd have to read it if you want to. This is on Audible Plus. It's on Kindle Unlimited if you want to check it out. The audiobook was pretty fun. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Reign of a King and Rise of a Queen by Rina Kent. This has been being recommended to me. It just came out at the beginning of this year. This was the first Rina Kent that I read. This is a billionaire dead sister's husband story, okay? So we have this heroine who, she's actually like 15 years younger than the hero. And when he married her sister, she was only like 7 years old. And then she never saw them really again. And then when she was 16 years old, it came out that her father was a really bad guy. And I don't want to say what he did. And that caused our heroine at 16 to go into witness protection. So fast forward like 11 years, our heroine shows up at her nephew's wedding, who I know from doing a little research and from what people have said that nephew, he actually had his own series that was a high school bully romance. So in the beginning of this series, he's marrying that woman from that series, and he's the son, so he's her nephew. So see, this is really like confusing thing, and I hadn't read those series before, but I was still able to do it because I don't really read high school bully romance. It's not my thing. I've read very few that I've actually liked. But I may read this because we got to see him a lot. So anyway, our hero, he recognizes who this is, even though he hasn't seen her in a really long time. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing back in our lives again? Why do you look, because she looks exactly like her sister. And so it's like he's seeing a ghost of what his wife looked like when she was younger. And anyway, he decides he wants to pursue her. And they enter this kind of taboo relationship because she owns a business and he wants her. And so he buys a controlling stock in her company and says, if you won't be mine, I'm going to sell your company off by parts. So it's that kind of story. It's a dark romance. There is a lot of stuff going on from their past that comes up. Again, lots of trigger warnings in this. But I really liked the hero, and I really liked what this story did. It had a little bit of like, I don't quite want to say thriller, but kind of mystery / thriller elements in it. And it was really hot and great, and I loved it. Then I read an eARC of When a Duke Loves a Governess by Olivia Drake. This book, I was asked by the publicity team if I would read this, and they gave me a NetGalley of it. This is like it sounds. There is this woman who, well, maybe it's not, because she's not a governess. She is working at a hat shop, and she's actually a bastard daughter of the aristocracy, but she doesn't know who. And so she's been trying to find out who her father is, because she kind of wants to blackmail him just a little bit so that she can get enough money to start her own business. And she's like, if I can find out who my father is, maybe I can like ask them to fund this for me, or whatever. And so she overhears that this specific duke is having problems keeping a governess for his daughter. His wife died while he was at sea. He's a traveler and an explorer and a scientific guy, and he would be out on his trips. Sorry, I need some coffee. So much talking to do. And his daughter was being raised by his in-laws, and they were not doing a good job. They didn't mistreat her, but they equally spoiled her and neglected her. It was this weird mix of the two things, right? And so now he has this daughter who's just completely out of bounds, and we can't keep a governess and all these things. So our heroine, Tasha, decides that she's just gonna go for it. And so she pretends to be a governess and gets the job, and then goes about trying to discover who her parents might be, who her father might be. And this duke, he's like, I won't tolerate any lies. And of course, there are some different things that keep coming out as we go. So here's the thing. I gave this book 4 stars. It's probably more of a 3.5, but I hadn't read an Olivia Drake before. I know there's 2 previous books out in this series. But I really enjoyed the buildup of their relationship. I enjoyed all the sweet times that they spent together. There was a lot of like hidden moments, right? There was a lot of sexual tension. I really enjoyed the daughter in this, because she's only 4, and the expectations on her and the way that she's been treated, like she wants her grandparents back so bad because she doesn't know who her dad is. He was gone most of her life, right? She's only 4, and he was away at sea for like 3 of those years, okay? And he just wants his daughter. He just wants to love his daughter. But he has a lot of traditions and like buttoned up parts of himself that keep him from just like falling at her feet and loving her. And also he doesn't want her to be spoiled anymore, but he also doesn't want to discipline her because he's been away for so long. So there's all these mixed up feelings. Like it's all mixed up feelings, and it's hard. Like it's hard stuff. And I liked how that was handled. Where it fell apart for me was in the ending. It got a little overly dramatic with how we handled this. And then it was kind of a rush to the conclusion of the relationship. Like it did this thing where it was all the stones were getting stacked up for this to work. And then it was like, no, I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to be with you. And then something dramatic happens. And it's like all those reasons that we had just disappeared because someone was in danger. And I'm not a huge fan of that, because it's like, okay, you didn't resolve anything. You got scared out of your mind. And so you were like, let's just be together. So, but it was really sweet. I love a governess story. So I still gave it 4 stars in my review because I'm a sucker for it. Sue me. Then I read Throne of Power by Rina Kent. So here's the thing again, right? I forgot to mention this. You remember that I said I was on a Shane East binge. All of these Rina Kent books that I read had Shane East as the narrator. So I was listening to those. Throne of Power is part 1 of a mafia duet. She does a lot of duets, I realized. So I plan to listen to the second one, but this is only the first one. So this is a Russian princess, and then it's actually her former guard is now like, it turns out he was a son of another like group. And so it's time for this Russian princess, like, she isn't the one supposed to get married, but they were going to marry off her younger cousin. And so she steps in to be the one to do the arranged marriage. And then surprise, surprise, it is her old guard who she also had a thing for, and he just left her. And so there are all these feelings that were unresolved, and now they're married. I really liked this one, again, for the hero. I don't know the conclusion of this story yet, so we'll have to see, but I really like that toys are used quite a bit in this. I love whenever there's toys used, and I feel like toys are never utilized enough in romance, and you can't tell me people aren't using them in the bedroom, because I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And even a man who wants to be like, my dick is enough, it's like, but you can make it better with some other things. So why wouldn't you? Anyway, I like that this big bad mafia guy was like, let's use some toys. It made me pretty happy. And I gave that one 4 stars. Then I read Quintessentially Q by Pepper Winters. This was the second book in the like Tears of Tess series or whatever it's being called. This was jarring. So Tears of Tess ended a particular way, and then this book picks up only like 2 weeks later. And we're still working on our feelings because, like, I don't want to spoil what happened in that book, but where we start at this book, there's still a lot of unresolved things. You know, that was a captor-captive story, and now we've made a decision to be together, but there's still a lot to deal with. This book did something that I'm not a fan of in captor-captive series, even though we're no longer in the captive-captive part. I'll put up a little spoiler thing quick. The heroine gets re-kidnapped by people who had her originally, who were training her for Q. Q pissed those people off, and so she gets kidnapped again. And she gets kidnapped and beaten and raped and tortured and trained how to break other slaves. So she has to become the torturer. So she's with them for a long time. And when she gets back to Q, she's completely broken again. And that was really hard to see. It was very hard to see. So yeah. Anyway, so going into the third book, I don't know where we're going. There's a note at the end of the second one where Pepper Winters said, she's like, I know I just put you through a lot. I promise the next book, even though it's not going to be all happy, is going to be about this couple getting their happily ever after. Because she's like, I couldn't just leave them there. And I was like, okay, cool. So I will continue this series when I get to it. I have all the books on my Kindle because I bought them all at once because I'm extra like that. So I will continue. Then I read If She Says Yes by Tasha Harrison. This was great. This was an interracial romance, and it was awesome. And I believe I think he's half Mexican, and she is black. But this is a best friend's mom romance. But it wasn't taboo, really, because he's 35, and she's 55, okay? He's, excuse me, he's liked her for 15 years. He's liked her since they were in college, and he lived at their house for a year. Yeah. And so now he's back staying at the house again because his best friend's getting married. So it's a wedding week, and he's decided to kind of make his move. But on top of that, this hero is submissive, and not completely like whips and chains submissive, but like, I want to do whatever you want me to do. And it was just enough to make it a little bit spicy, but at the same time, he was still a very strong, caring character. And not that being submissive doesn't make you that. I'm just saying for some people who might be like, oh, I don't like that kind of hero, I think you might like this kind of hero. It's pretty delightful. So I gave this one 5 stars because it was so sweet and sexy, and I just really loved it quite a bit. I love older women romances, but I like this one because it wasn't taboo, really, you know? It's taboo because people might be like, what? And like, he's so much younger than you, but I really liked it. And the way that we worked through the conflict, I believed it. Like, this wasn't just going to be a snap your fingers. The one thing I didn't love, and my friend who read it also said, is there wasn't an epilogue to this one, and it kind of ends pretty abruptly. Even though it was still, HEA was here, I wish we'd had an epilogue to this one. I'm a big proponent of epilogues in HEA. Like, I need them. Some people don't want them, but, like, I have to have them. Especially for something so crazy as that. But I gave it 5 stars. Then I reread Love in the Wild by Emma Castle. This had to do with my Shane East binge. I knew that he was the narrator for when this came out on audio. I read this book first last year. And so, yeah, I still loved it. 5 stars. This is a Tarzan retelling, but it's set in modern times. And this photojournalist goes on a trip, and her group all gets slaughtered by poachers. Thorn, who's the Tarzan character, comes in and saves her. And then we discover that Thorn is actually like the heir to a dukedom that he didn't know about. And we're going to figure that out. It's great. Then I read Marek by Liza Probst. I gave this 2.5 stars. This was a weird alien. I don't even know what was happening. I skimmed a lot of it. I wanted to give it a chance, but it was weird. I had nothing else to say. Then I read, wait, did I skip something? I skipped one. Sorry. Then I read Texas Destiny by Lorraine Heath. This is actually on my April TBR, but Crystal had already read it. This is going to be our book club pick for April. That live show, I think, is on April 11th. I'm not sure. It's the second Thursday in April on Crystal's channel. This is the first book in the Texas trilogy. This is about a mail-order bride named Amelia, and her soon-to-be brother-in-law comes to pick her up from the train station, and then they have a month-long journey to get to her future husband's land. This has a scarred hero. This has a cinnamon roll hero. This deals with a lot of the scars from the war, which that war would have been the Civil War. He has a very scarred face, like legit part of his face is missing, and he wears an eye patch. And yeah, it's a very slow burn romance. I'll save my thoughts for the live show. I really loved the hero. He was so precious and soft and caring and trying to take care of her. And it was really beautiful. And so, yeah, I'll save what my thoughts are for then. I don't want to spoil them. There we go. Then I also listened to A Warrior's Promise. This is book 3 in the Warrior King trilogy, or series. There's 4 books by Donna Fletcher. This one was not my favorite. I gave this one 3 stars. And the reason being that it was very repetitive. It was repetitive in terms of how the series is going, and it was also repetitive within itself. So there's a lot of situations in this book that have happened in previous books, and then the situations within this book kept happening again and again. This is a kind of a road trip situation. Our heroine, her name is Charlotte, but she's disguised as Charles because her father has been taken by the king, the false king, and she's trying to find him, and so she's undercover as a boy. And then she runs into Bryce, who is, you know, one of our warrior brothers, and he doesn't know that she is a woman in the beginning, even though everyone else was able to tell. So I really liked that. I liked what happened when he found out, but he got so possessive. And even though she kept proving him wrong again and again and again, it got a little irritating, which was frustrating because the previous books didn't annoy me like this. And then they're on this road trip and they keep running into people who are being hurt by the king, and so we try to help them. And then we're running into people who've been hurt by the king, and we're trying to help them. And again, that's happened in the previous books, and that happened over and over and over and over again in this book. So I ended up skimming the end of this one because I was just over it. I'm very excited for the final book, though, because I want to know who the king really is and what's going to happen. But this one is probably a low point in this series for me, whereas I gave the first 2 books, I think, 5 and 4.5 stars. Actually, I gave the first one 6 stars, and the second one was like 4.5 stars. So I was kind of disappointed by this. And then I have a DNF, and this hurt a lot. I know if some of you watched my TBR video for March, you know I was going to try to read books from the year that I was born. I kind of failed at that, but I wanted to at least read one of them. And so I tried to read Castles by Julie Garwood. I was pretty excited about this. It is about this princess, this orphan princess who has a guardian, and he ends up getting ill. So his son takes over as guardian, and she needs to find a husband within 2 weeks to save her kingdom, basically to save her land. I hated this guy. I hated him so much. He was so condescending. He was an asshole. The scene that really did it in for me is that he was gaslighting her. He was gaslighting her, and it was pissing me off so much. Literally on their wedding night, she asked him what's going to happen. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you about it, because she used to live in a nunnery for a long time. Her mother died, leaving her orphan in this convent. And so the sisters, they told her some things. They were like, love within matrimony is made to worship and adore each other. Men will, your husband should worship you. So she'd heard some good things about it. But when she asked him to explain what's going to happen, he just jumps into mauling her, basically. Which was maybe supposed to be sexy. But then, the next morning, he's gotten up and is having breakfast, and she wakes up alone and discovers blood on her sheets and is terrified that this man hurt her inside. And so she comes in, and he's all like, feeling really sexy still. He's like, come sit on my lap. And she's like, you can't touch me anymore. And he's like, I'm going to touch you whenever I want to. Just says it that way, by the way. And she's like, no, you might still be able to do it, but I think you broke me. And he laughs in her face and then proceeds to tell her what happened. This is just a small example of him, because she's worried about, there's some women who've been going missing. There's literally a serial killer plot also happening in this book, which I was kind of interested in. And she's trying to find out what's happened to a couple different people that she's known have just disappeared. And he's like, this is none of your business. Stay out of it. Stay out of it. I'm your boss. Don't do it. Don't do it. And she's like, why don't you care that these people are going missing? And he's like, because it's none of our business. And, so, yeah. So then, though, when he explains what happened to her after the fact, like, I'm just so pissed at him that she came to him earnestly and sweetly to be like, tell me what happens between us. And he just mauls her, and they have sex. And then when she's scared and upset that she's hurt because no one's explained to her what her maidenhead is and what that is, he laughs in her face. And we're in his POV where he's like, he hit his face in her neck so she wouldn't know. And he's like pleased that he hurt her, and that like, oh, it won't ever hurt again, baby. And he calls her baby all the time, which I don't know if this is historically accurate, but it was pissing me off, because to me, you earn calling someone baby. Like, this is something you don't know about me. I love when a hero calls a heroine baby when he's earned it, because then it's just this sweet endearment. But I was so fucking pissed at this book, guys. Livid. I was talking with Jessin, Juliet, and Crystal about it, and I was so mad. So when I got to about this point, I was like, why am I torturing myself with this? I'm done. So I DNF'd it. I'm really sad, because I've read other Julie Garwoods that I loved, but we're just going to call that one a loss and move on, and I will try again another day. That was also book 4 in a series, and I could definitely tell that there was other couples that I'd missed out on, so I may still try reading some of those, because I'm not going to give up on Julie Garwood. That book's from 1993. That can be a hit or a miss with stuff like that. Then I read Anarchy Missing by J.A. Huss. So this is the second book in her supervillain series. I think I've shared this, that like, this is too complicated of a story to explain in this video. Like, I'm just not going to. But it has high tech. It has superhuman people. It has like super soldier serum, and it has like an evil corporation trying to take over the world. There was stuff poisoning the new coffee shop, so people were addicted to this coffee, and it really was like poisoning them and stuff. It has like so many crazy levels of like a superhero stuff. So if you're someone who like loves comic books, or you love Marvel, or you love like the darker, or you love like The Boys, I think you should really try this series. The first one is on Audible Plus. All of the books are on Kindle Unlimited. The first book is on Audible Plus. The second 2, you have to buy them, which I totally did, because they were only $7.50 upgrade. And I'm going to read the third one next month for sure, because this was great. And then I read The Wrong Gentleman by Louise Bay. I wanted to continue reading her books. I accidentally read the second one instead of the first one first, but they're disconnected enough that it's okay, like her other series. So these ones are all about like rich people and yachting and stuff. And so this one is about an ex-SS agent who is going undercover on a yacht to stop an arms deal from happening, and it's his romance with the head stewardess. So they have a one-night stand before they meet, and then they realize that they're going to be working together, and they don't want to be involved with each other because he knows that it could be dangerous on this boat, and she doesn't want to fall for anyone. So drama abounds. And then the last book, which I just finished last night, is Black Sunshine by Karina Halle. This is a vampire romance. It is her newest release. It came out just on Wednesday. And holy bananas, this was interesting. So I don't want to say too much because this book just came out. It has a very complex world. Like, none of the vampire lore you've read before is applicable in this series. So you're starting from scratch kind of situation. There is a note at the end of this book that this would function as a standalone, but the author wants to write more books. So if you read this book and you like this book, make sure you shout out about it because she'll only write another book if people like it enough. There is one villain that we defeat in this book, but there is still an arch villain who's just kind of left hanging. So there definitely is room for another story to be told. So I would really like that to happen. So please give this one a try. This is about a girl who doesn't know she's a vampire. She's been raised by vampire slayers because she was actually taken from her parents as a child. That's in the prologue of this book, so no spoilers for this. But this has a unique situation because when she turns 21, she gets kidnapped by a vampire named Absalom. And he tells her that she's a vampire and didn't know it. And that's this. So it's captive, it's vampire. It's pretty dark. It was kind of cute because Karina Halle, I know she's written a horror series before, but I've only read her rom-coms and her like almost women's fiction titles because some of hers are very emotional. But I mean, I've only read her like contemporary stuff. I haven't read the horror because I don't like horror. But it was cute because in the beginning of this book, there's like a trigger warning. There's a trigger warning for the normal stuff. Like there's a few scenes of like kind of non-consent. I mean, again, you're talking to the dark romance queen, so it's difficult for me to say like I didn't feel uncomfortable by any of it, but I usually don't. So don't use my darkness scale for your scale. But you said there's a scene that borders on MFM, so if you're uncomfortable with any kind of sharing, don't read this. And plus I'll say like it's only bordering on MFM, like it's not in a sex act we're sharing each other. It's just more of a voyeur situation. Okay, I'll put that out there. But I was like, it's cute that this is a trigger warning. But I understand, I mean, there should still be trigger warnings. But it's funny that the trigger warning was for like, oh, there might be an MFM situation. I was like, this is definitely an author who mostly writes contemporary, and she doesn't want one of her regular viewers to stumble into this book unaware. So that's very smart of her. Make sure you read the notes at the beginning. I gave this 4.5 stars. It maybe is more towards a 4. Tiffany and I were talking about this because there's a lot of stuff unresolved. But to me, if she ends up writing more books, this would be a 5-star. If this ends up being on its own, it's probably a 4-star because there's not enough that gets covered in this book. But the sex is super great. The like blood sharing is fantastic, and I love it. Like one of my favorite things about when vampires are is I love fucking and sucking. Okay, like I love it so much. So, okay, those are the 20 books that I read for week 13. So there we go. I need to finish up my morning and get to this baby shower. So whoop whoop. So much fun. Thank you so much for watching this. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week. Make sure you check out my socials if you want to hang out with me more, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!